Is China about to make a bold move in the world of trade?
The trade war took a dangerous turn and is now morphing into what many are calling a currency war. It's all-out economic warfare between the two biggest economies in the world, U.S. and China.
China is now simply too large for the rest of the world to absorb this enormous capacity. Actions taken by the PRC today can shift world prices. And when the global market is flooded by artificially cheap Chinese products, the viability of American and other foreign firms is put into question.
China is entitled to have a relationship with Russia. What we have made clear is that it is unacceptable to us for China to support Russia militarily.
I have tremendous respect for President Xi. But we have a trade deficit. It is the largest deficit of any country in the history of our world. It's out of control. This has been long in the making. You've heard many speeches by me and talks by me and interviews where I talk about unfair trade practices. But we have one particular problem, and that's China.
中方不想同美方打贸易战，但我们绝不会坐视中国的利益受到损害。
So, how has the surge in trade between the U.S. and China reshaped economies globally, and what are the implications for both nations? What specific grievances does the United States have against China regarding trade practices, and how have these issues escalated over time? And the most important question that has every country and investor scratching their head, is the looming threat of a trade war inevitable? As we peel back the layers of the U.S.-China trade relationship, these questions linger in the air, beckoning us to explore further. Like breadcrumbs leading us through a forest of economic intrigue, each query sparks curiosity and anticipation for the revelations that lie ahead. So, join us as we unravel the mysteries of one of the most consequential trade relationships in history, where every answer brings us closer to understanding the forces shaping our world today. Over the past few decades, trade between the U.S. and China has exploded like a 4th of July firework. It's been a game changer for both countries. China has become a paradise for U.S. goods and services, while Uncle Sam remains a top destination for Chinese exports. Sounds like a win-win, right? Well, not quite. Sure, American consumers have been living the dream with shelves stocked full of affordable Chinese goodies, from gadgets to gizmos. But here's the flip side. While we've been scoring bargains left and right, millions of hard-working Americans have found themselves out of a job, thanks to stiff competition from cheap imports flooding in from China. Now let's talk tech. The United States hasn't been too pleased with China's playbook when it comes to playing fair in the trade game. There's been a lot of finger-pointing, with accusations flying left, right, and center. Uncle Sam says China's been strong-arming American companies into handing over their prized technology secrets, or even worse, straight-up swiping them. And remember when China waltzed into the World Trade Organization, WTO, 2 decades ago, all bright-eyed and bushy-tailed? Well, the optimism party didn't last long. Instead of playing by the rules of the Global Trade Club, China decided to go rogue, pumping truckloads of cash into its own industries, leaving U.S. and other foreign companies choking on their dust. But wait, there's more. China's investment spree has set off some major alarm bells on the national security front. Uncle Sam's been tossing and turning in bed, fretting over Chinese companies creeping into sensitive sectors like a nosy neighbor peeking through your curtains. Now, fast forward to today. With Joe Biden at the helm, the United States is gearing up for a showdown. No more Mr. Nice Guy. It's gloves off, ready to rumble mode. But what does this mean for the future of U.S.-China economic ties? Well, strap yourselves in, guys, because we're about to dive deep into the murky waters of trade warfare and see just how choppy things might get. All right, guys, let's take a trip down memory lane and unravel the roller coaster ride that's been the US-China trade relationship. Back in the day, it was like the United States and China were two ships passing in the night. For 30 long years after the People's Republic of China set sail in 1949, there was hardly a whisper of trade between the two giants. Washington had slammed the door shut, cutting ties with Beijing's communist regime. But then, in 1979, the winds of change started blowing. The United States and China buried the hatchet and normalized relations. And boy, did sparks fly. Over the next 4 decades, trade between these two powerhouses exploded like popcorn in a microwave, going from a measly few $billion to a mind-boggling hundreds of billions annually. Now, let's zoom in on China's side of the story. In the late 1970s, under the wise leadership of Deng Xiaoping, China decided it was time for a makeover. Out went the old-fashioned state control, and in came the era of economic reform. China rolled out the red carpet for private industry, hoping to kickstart a trade and investment frenzy. Fast forward to 1986, and China was knocking on the WTO's door, eager to join the global trade party. After some nail-biting negotiations with Uncle Sam and other WTO bigwigs, China finally got the golden ticket in December 2001. But it came with strings attached. Beijing had to promise to clean up its act, slashing tariffs, protecting intellectual property, and playing by the rules. Now here's where things get interesting. U.S. President Bill Clinton and his pals were over the moon about China joining the WTO. They thought it would be a win-win, boosting trade and nudging China towards democracy. But not everyone was on board. Labor unions and some congressional Democrats smelled trouble, fearing China's lax labor and environmental standards would drag everyone down a slippery slope. But hey, the show went on. Trade between the U.S. and China skyrocketed, fueled by China's pivotal role in global supply chains. Think of Chinese factories as the puppet masters, pulling the strings and piecing together products from all corners of the world to ship off to the good old US of A. The stage was set, the players were in position, and the US-China trade saga was about to kick into high gear. But little did anyone know, trouble was brewing on the horizon, and a storm was about to hit the trade waters like a tidal wave. First up, let's talk cold, hard cash. I'm talking lower prices for everything from gadgets to gizmos, sneakers to smartphones. Thanks to all the goods flowing in from China, U.S. consumers have been able to stretch their dollars further, saving a pretty penny along the way. And that's not all. A study found that between 2000 and 2007, the average American household pocketed an extra $1,500 a year, all thanks to trade with China. That's a lot of extra dough for a rainy day fund or a splurge on that dream vacation. But wait, there's more. U.S. companies are raking in the big bucks too. With China's massive market at their fingertips, American businesses are cashing in on sales left, right, and center. In fact, exports to China are supporting over 1 million jobs back home in the good old US of A. That means more opportunities, more growth, and more prosperity for hardworking Americans. And let's not forget about the flip side of the coin. Chinese companies are also making it rain with investments in the land of the free. Sure, it might have slowed down a bit recently, what with Uncle Sam keeping a closer eye on things, but billions of dollars have still found their way into the U.S. economy, fueling growth and innovation. Now, let's zoom out for a moment and take a look at the big picture. Since hitching its wagon to the global trade train in 2001, China's economy has been on an absolute tear. It's like watching a tiny acorn grow into a mighty oak tree. In just over 2 decades, China's economy has ballooned more than 5 times its size, making it the second largest in the world. And the best part, Hundreds of millions of people have been lifted out of poverty along the way, a true testament to the power of trade and economic growth. Trade with China isn't just about buying and selling stuff. It's about building bridges, creating opportunities, and lifting people up. But like any good story, there's always a twist waiting just around the corner. And in this case, that twist might just be the spark that ignites a trade war. First up, we've got subsidization and state-owned enterprises. Picture this: the Chinese government playing favorites and giving a leg up to certain industries, all in the name of creating national champion companies. Now, while this might sound like a noble cause, it's got other countries seeing red. Why? Because these subsidies can throw a wrench in the works for companies from other countries who just can't compete with such hefty levels of state support. And don't even get me started on those state-owned enterprises, which some argue are nothing more than puppets dancing to the government's tune, making decisions that have more to do with politics than market forces. Next on the list is currency manipulation. Imagine if you could control the value of your money like a puppeteer pulling the strings of a marionette. Well, that's kind of what China did by keeping the value of its currency, the renminbi, artificially low for years. This move made Chinese imports cheaper and U.S. exports more expensive, adding fuel to the fire of the trade deficit between the two countries. And let's not forget about the elephant in the room: labor and human rights violations. From poor working conditions to reports of forced labor in Xinjiang, where millions of Uyghurs are being repressed, China's track record on human rights leaves much to be desired. This isn't just a humanitarian issue. It's become a major sticking point in the trade negotiations.
China is the #1 trading partner of the United States with a grand total of roughly $737 billion.
We are looking at a reality that has, a 25% tariff on every single product that would come in from China.
Mexico has outpaced China for the first time in 20 years to become the top source of imports for the U.S., according to the Commerce Department.
But it's kind of like floodwaters. I mean, China is flooding the world with cheap exports, and it's very difficult. Those like floodwaters, they will find a way into our market and other markets. It's very hard to keep it out, because they'll depreciate their currency. And so if we hit them with a higher tariff, Chinese products will become commensurately cheaper as the currency goes down, and that neutralizes the tariff to some extent.
Being overly dependent on any single country for a very important good that's used in your economy can lead to a dangerous fragility in supply chains. And in the case of some of these clean energy goods, electric batteries, the minerals that go into them, solar panels, we have been very, very heavily dependent on China. And that's another reason that we and other countries want to have some domestic capacity ourselves.
There should be no one cheerleading for China to crash, because that will be terrible for the global economy.
Perhaps the biggest bone of contention is the clash of economic systems. On one side, you've got China, with its state-led approach to the economy, where the government pulls the strings behind the scenes. And on the other side, you've got the United States and its allies, supposedly championing the free market and individual freedoms. It's like trying to mix oil and water. These two systems just don't seem to want to play nice together. And let's face it, China's got a knack for playing the long game. They've mastered the art of scooping up Western technology, using it to build up their own companies into global juggernauts, and then unleashing them onto the world stage. Just look at the 5G industry, where China's dominance is undeniable. This kind of market monopoly has got other countries shaking in their boots, realizing that they might soon be left in the dust if they don't do something fast. So there you have it, guys. A laundry list of issues that have been simmering beneath the surface, threatening to boil over into a full-blown trade war. And while the United States might be leading the charge against China's trade practices, they're certainly not alone in their concerns. It's a tangled web of economic tensions that's got the whole world holding its breath, wondering what the next move will be. So stay tuned, guys. The trade war continues. To watch the latest geopolitical news, watch this video here.